The sheer amount of information out there today means that we can be painfully aware of the things we've not yet got down on the guitar, the things we're yet to look at, or the things we've looked at already and haven't yet fully explored. In the same way that sometimes I think we can easily slip into unhelpful thinking of things like, I won't sound good until I've got X piece of gear, till I've got that guitar, till I've got that amp. I think we can also slip into the thinking of, I won't be able to solo well, improvise well until I've got my arpeggios, my chord tones down, or until I've improved my ear, or until I've, mastered my modes. And I think this type of thinking can really limit your creativity and confidence. And in this jazz guitar vlog, I want to talk about 5 different things which I think can help with this unhelpful way of thinking. Now, my first point is work with what you have. Rather than being overwhelmed by those things you haven't practiced or things you don't feel confident with, take what you do have down well and use it and apply it. Let's take the first section of Black Orpheus, so in the guitar-friendly key of A minor there. That type of sort of turnaround, minor turnaround thing. Now, let's just imagine guitarist 1, they've not really studied chord tones much or scales really, they've just got things like pentatonics down, which is a great start point, it's a great foundation. And that person could solo over those changes with, say, the A minor pentatonic. Creating little phrases, little melodies as they go, and just using what they have. And for me, providing that person is working from the perspective of hearing what they're doing. So, do 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 do, that sort of idea, rather than just sort of rambling through the scale like, because they know where the scale is. They're playing with intention and with an intention to create a melody. That sort of idea. And that's a 5-note scale. You might then have someone that, say, knows the harmonic minor, so a 7-note scale, so that they can create with that. And rather than getting bogged down into what all the chords are and everything that's going on, again, they can use their ear and their knowledge of that scale just to work with what they have. And create phrases and, again, melodies with that 7-note scale. So it's going to be a little bit richer than the first way with just the 1 scale. And that's going to be a little bit richer than just the pentatonic by virtue of the extra 2 notes. And guitarist 3 might be someone working on their arpeggios, their chord tones with this A minor 7, B minor 7 flat 5, E7, and be like, right, just in order, A minor 7, B minor 7, E7. And it might start like this, just in order. That type of thing. And I think that's a good foundation, a good place to get used to where your chord tones are on the fretboard. It might not sound as much like a solo, but I think it's still important work to be done. And as well as sort of playing with those 4 chord tones, you could be like, just, find the roots. So that's, A, B, E, find the third, C, D, G sharp, find the 5th, E, F, B, find the 7th, G, A, D, finding those or finding pairs of those. Building up a good awareness of where those chord tones are on the fretboard and what they sound like against the chords as they change. And the 4th guitarist might play with those chord changes a bit more smoothly, sort of flowing into them. So if I went A, C, E, G, which is an A minor arpeggio, they might think, where's the nearest note of the next chord? And you could go down to this F with a chromatic link there, something like that maybe, or go up to the A. Many ways you can navigate that, and it's about, whatever note you finish on the chord you're on. Say I finish on an E on the A minor, where's the next note of the next chord? I could go down to the D for the B minor, or I could go up to the F. Finding notes with the chords, finding close, efficient moves. And I hope that illustrates, when you're in the practice room, you're going to be working at different levels with whatever you're working with, what you know. You could be working with a 5-note scale, pentatonic scale. You could be working with 7-note scales like the harmonic minor or modes or whatever. You could be working with just playing your chord tones and just playing them in order, just working on hearing them, finding them, or working on sort of playing them into each other and Each one's obviously a little step up, but you can, at each level, you can work within what you have and what you know. So point 1, work with what you have right now to improvise. Point 2 is about perpetually postponing applying what you're working with. It can be very easy to know that, say, oh, I'm working with chord tones with, say, Black Orpheus this week. And it can be very easy each day just to practice those arpeggios, but at no point actually press play on a backing track or create a loop to practice them and apply them. So my way around this is I like to divide my practice up into 20-minute chunks. So if I'm working on something for 20 minutes, let's imagine I'm working on Black Orpheus for 20 minutes, and I'm just working on that first section. I might spend 15 minutes working on those arpeggios, working on the sound of them, and technique, and finding them and different ways to practice them. But then 5 minutes at the end of that 20-minute chunk, I'm going to play to the backing or some chords of some form to apply what I've been doing. Otherwise, you just end up perpetually practicing things and not applying what you're working with, which is a problem. Now, point number 3 is a funny one, but it's being the worst musician in the room. And this takes a lot of confidence to, A, be aware that you might be the worst musician in the room, but to actually go out and play with other people maybe before you're ready. Now, I've heard this said before, and I think it's an interesting piece of advice and wisdom. And the obviously idea is that if you're the worst musician in the room at the jam session or in the band, you will learn from those other people, hopefully. Hopefully you don't remain the worst musician in the room long term, but the idea is, you chuck yourself into it and you learn so much from others. And really, jazz is such a social language and music and genre that it's one of the best ways to learn is through playing with others. Everyone's got different insights and different things they will share with you and hopefully help you with as you play with them. And I really think the idea with this is playing with what you know, playing with what you have, but playing with others which know more, and hopefully those ideas and their experience rubs off on you. And not falling into that trap of postponing when you're going to start to play with other people, like that idea of when you'll be ready. You'll never feel ready if that's what you think. Point number 4 is putting yourself out there. Now this can be one that's difficult if you don't feel very confident in your abilities or your knowledge, and I think you just have to kind of just ignore all that sort of thinking if you can. And how you could do this, it could be in terms of jamming with other people, local jazz jams. It could be finding people locally to play with. Difficult in present situation, I know, but there is a thing some of my students have been using called Jam Kazam, which is like online jamming, and apparently the interface in it makes it quite good in real time. I've not tried it, but I think that could be quite fun if you want to try that. Now, I've told this tale before, but I think it really illustrates the point perfectly. I did my first jazz gig when I'd been playing jazz for a matter of months. I must have been 15 or 16 or something. At this point in time, I'd probably been playing guitar for about 2 years, and a family friend who was very supportive in helping me get into jazz, and she'd previously worked as a jazz musician, had got me involved in this gig where we were going to play 4 or 5 numbers with this guy. I didn't know who he was at this point in time. And it's a chap called Bob Wilbur, who was a saxophonist and clarinet player who just happened to play with Louis Armstrong, Duke Ellington and Sidney Bechet. And I'm going to do my first jazz gig with him. And I had no inkling of like really how awesome it really was to truly be playing with someone of that level. If I could do that now, again, I'd ask so many questions. I'd, obviously do a lot better job than I did back then. I would have just shredded pentatonics and bluffed my way through the chords with probably bar chords and awful inappropriate shapes for the songs. No doubt my rhythm and sense of timing probably wasn't all that then as well. So I can imagine, I'm glad there's not a video of it, but it would be very interesting to see. Was I ready for that gig? No. If I had all the information about it, would I have still done it? Possibly not. Did I learn a lot from it? Yes, I did. It was an incredibly kind of inspiring moment playing with someone like that for me, and it really was the start of a great journey for me. It's easy to turn down opportunities, and I think it's important to know when to say no to things. But I think if you're at that point where you're just sort of getting into this, you've got to take that leap and you've got to play with other people and put yourself out there. Things are challenging with all that at the minute. There's other things you can do. You could try that Jam Kazam. I'd love on my Facebook group if people want to start posting videos of themselves playing for supportive encouragement and feedback from myself and from other viewers on there. Then that's there too. You can also post videos yourself on YouTube, obviously of your own playing. But I think sort of putting yourself out there is a really good thing to do, and it can really build your confidence, and also that experience of the insight of others can really help you see what you need to work on and what things you're missing. And my 5th and final point is switching off the commentary as you're playing. It's important when you're practicing, I think, to be self-aware and aware of what you're doing. Don't practice passively. Be aware of technique. Be aware of the sound of the things you're doing, your timing, those sort of things, definitely. But when you're practicing soloing or playing with other people, specifically soloing, I think you can't be overthinking things and sort of running commentary of what you're doing. It all depends on what level you're at, what point you're at. But when you're soloing, your priority is to fall into trying to create phrases, tell a story, use your ear, and it's not trying to apply everything you've learned in the practice room, in the sense that you don't want to be thinking, right, okay, I'm going to use my triads here, I'm going to use my arpeggio, I'm going to use my scales here, I'm going to use that lick by Joe Pass here. That kind of thinking, if you try and do that in real time when you're improvising, whether playing over a track or playing at a jam, your playing will sound like it and you'll kind of hear all that thinking, and you end up probably not saying a lot. So you want to switch off that commentary and instead try to get into a different mindset, which is really this idea of, if you've got chord changes you're playing over, it's really about trying to create a melody over the top of that with whatever harmony you can hear, what you know, whether that be, like I said earlier, a pentatonic, a harmonic minor scale, some mode, some arpeggio, whatever it might be. If I play these chords, could you imagine a melody over the top of it? Hopefully you can, and that's what you want to try to do. One thing I sometimes do when driving is listen to backing tracks and sing solos over the top of those backing tracks. It's quite a fun activity to do, and providing you're the only person in the car, I will definitely say that. So that's just a few thoughts, and I think they're important topics, some things I wish I'd known sooner, and I think it's all comes down to confidence, helpful and unhelpful ways of thinking, and knowing when you're slipping into that unhelpful thing and how to avoid that and what to try to think instead. So those are my points on what I think is a very important topic. This idea of working with what you have, not putting off applying what you're working with, having the confidence to put yourself out there and apply things and do these things. And I think, if you're not very confident in your ability, then I think you have to take steps to sort of address that. And I think, although putting yourself out there and playing with other people is a big leap of faith and it can feel quite daunting, everyone's done it at some point. Going back to that first ever jazz gig, for me, that was bonkers really, looking back, but it's a really nice memory. I would kill for that sort of experience again with someone of that level. It would be a real pleasure to play with someone like that now, knowing what I know now. Anyway, it was a great learning experience, and you could experience similar things with other people, and in that practice room when you're practicing, just think when you're working with something, right, just flip a switch at some point and think, right, I'm going to apply this, I'm going to try this in real time over a track, let's see what happens. Always trying to think musically, always trying to think melodically, and you'll be surprised where this sort of thinking can take you and how much more sort of purposeful your practice sessions can feel. Anyway, don't forget the Jazz Guitar with Andy Facebook group. I haven't started posting too much on there yet, but I will more and more, and I would love to see some posts of your playing on there. That's what I've created it for in the long term. Anyway, hope you're all taking care of yourselves, enjoying your practice, and leave me a comment if you've got any comments on today's video. Until next time, you take care.